Hi, Sarah. Great to see you. Sarah, could you share your thoughts with me, please, on how the impact of ESG is influencing new market access and how the changing landscape is impacting growth opportunities for businesses, please?
Okay, sure. So when we're looking at accessing a new market, it's really important that that business has done that value chain analysis and understands where their impacts are and understands then what the requirements are in those new markets of their customers or potential customers and what the regulatory environment is, and have they factored in those costs into their product and also into their operation, and the costs of doing business, for example, ensuring compliance with some of the regulations, for example, on labeling. So I'll just give you some example. If we look at social standards, there might be a requirement for their customers to provide certification to determine, what the social standards are in their supply chain. So, for example, this would not be certification that goes on the product, but behind the scenes that is required as part of a customer's due diligence program. So the customer might also have an expectation on living wage. This is becoming more and more of an issue over and above the minimum wage, as well as the risk of modern slavery. So in the UK and Australia, that's a really big topic. In terms of packaging, the business will need to look at, will they face a tax on the amount of packaging, in particular plastic, that they use. So there will be requirements coming up in Europe, for example, with the packaging and packaging waste regulation. We expect more information on that later this year. Traceability, are they expected to provide additional information for their customers to be able to tell the story about the product or to prove due diligence on the product? Or is that required legally, for example, to prove that there's been no deforestation as per EU deforestation regulation coming up at the end of the year, or the UK forest commodities regulation as well. So what they would need to have to support all of this is like a detailed specification. So as well as having ingredients and nutrition, they would be able to clearly state, what is the salt content, what is the sugar content, what is the carbon footprint, because many customers, retailers, for example, are asking for carbon footprint. That is becoming a key requirement for many of them because they also have to report on that, and which is a requirement of legislation, upcoming legislation now. Animal welfare. This is also something. Are the details known? Can they be communicated either on the specification, or are there areas in the law where it's required to be labelled? For example, in Germany, the type of rearing that animals have, that needs to be on a label now. Nutrition via a Nutri-Score, as in Europe, for example, in France and Belgium. Are there products in scope for sugar taxes? Have they factored that in? And then of course, a final thing around the labelling. Is it compliant? Is it legal, covering all of those aspects? So we've got a specification, we've got labelling, we've got information that might not be required on labelling, but for reporting purposes, for customers either to put in their own sustainability report, or to report according to regulatory requirements, for example, in Europe with the corporate sustainability reporting directive. So that's really important. And what they really need to understand is, as they are accessing these new markets, they will inevitably be part of somebody else's supply chain. So if certain requirements aren't evident to them now, say, for example, reporting requirements, they will become required because they're part of somebody else's chain, and that somebody else, like a big brand or a retailer, will be required to report on sustainability within their supply chains.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Sarah. Thank you. I think some of the things I'm seeing in the market at the moment is If you look at the UK, there's a real focus again on salt and sugar reduction. And I think that's obviously been driven by the focus around the restrictions on products you can market at the end of the aisles and near the till for the HFSS guidance or regulation. I think that's very key. Continuing to see more products now that are labelled on the animal welfare aspect. So how has the product been reared, and that's becoming more important in both the UK and the Australian market, as you say. And some of the coverage recently around, the health star ratings in Australia moving into be a mandatory system rather than the voluntary system that it is currently. And I think as you're looking at a business to say, do I want to acquire this because it's got great capability and a great product range, looking ahead to see the impact on marketing, the change on labeling with regards to how you can communicate with consumers. I think it's a very dynamic space. And I think if I'd summarised it, if you're looking to make an acquisition, you've really got to know what that legislative landscape looks like, because if it goes the wrong way, it can significantly impact your growth opportunity. But Sarah, thanks as always.